Welcome back, everyone, to the Peace and Chaos program. I'm DJ Aceman, along with Big Don here today for the 2022 Senate race projections. This was actually a list of issues that matter most to voters. This was actually compiled by the Long Island University back in September 2021, and it lists several issues that some have changed, some have not. But I think that some of them, I think the first one definitely is um, I'd say right now, arguably the most important. But then when you go down the list, I think Supreme Court that has definitely gone up as well. Foreign policy, I could see too, and maybe even climate change and healthcare.
Well, obviously, the economy is probably going to be the biggest one right now, as right now we're dealing with a record amount of inflation. Gas prices are just going for the roof. It's hard to buy goods for the average American, and there does seem to be a shift to Republicans on this, as Democrats are receiving a heavy amount of blame for this. But also now that we're in this sort of climate with the recent happenings of the Supreme Court undoing Roe versus Wade, and also the amount of mass shootings that seem to be happening in this country. This does seem favorable for Democrats. Uh, in terms of where the shifts are right now, we could let's pull up an article from a recent report citing that over 1 million people are now going to the GOP. I think in general, this is obviously going to be probably one of the most important midterms of our time. If we compare this to other midterms, I mean, especially in my lifetime, I don't think this comes close to in terms of what's at stake in terms of the ballots here, in
Mhm.
terms of how people are going to be voting, and this is ultimately going to be a sign of what's going to come in 2024.
Yes, I couldn't agree more with you. I think that this midterm is definitely going to be, one of the most important because right now it's a deadlock in the Senate. Um, you have a lot of, I think Republicans have a lot of momentum. However, I think if we look at all the issues right now, specifically with, gun rights, abortion, even election accessibility, which has come up and a lot of discussions across the U.S. since 2020, those issues right there are issues that I think Democrats need to run on. They cannot model their campaigns after, candidates who really just focus on their opponents and the flaws of their opponents. They really need to focus on policy. And I think that for 2022, Democrats can make up the most success if they focus on these issues and they really learn how to target specifically people who live in suburbs. And we're going to get into this later on, specifically looking at several of these competitive races across a few states. But I think that Democrats really need to hit home on these social issues.
If you look at Biden's approval rating here, as you can see, I think voters are kind of blaming a lot of the current issues, especially the economic issues, on sort of the current administration. As you can see here, there's a general trend in terms of what's going on in this year. As you can see, it's at a pretty all-time low in terms of approval and disapproval rating.
I think that, as we could see here, I think that in August of last year, so August of 2021, was when the approval rating and disapproval rating overlapped. And then we see here the negative trajectory of the approval rating of President Biden in the fall of 2021. And this had to do with the disastrous, leaving of
Yeah,
Afghanistan and all those reports that came out. And then
gas
into
prices.
the fall, yep, into the fall as well, and into the spring was when Ukraine occurred, and there was a lot of criticism towards the U.S. handling of Russia and the Ukraine crisis, and then after that, the inflation, which kind of came to a halt, really came to voters' minds, I believe, in 2022, early 2022, and since then, we've seen the impacts that has had, and also baby formula, that shortage as well alarmed a lot of Americans too. So a lot of different economic issues and just world events that came into play, which has lowered President Biden's approval rating. Let's go to the big board right here. So as you can see, some states are going to be having Senate races. The states in light gray are not actually having races. So right now, if we just take a look at what's up for play, Democrats currently have 36 total seats, while Republicans have 29. This is before we factor in the 35 seats that are up for grabs. But now let's go first and let's go see Democratic stronghold states. So Vermont, Connecticut, New York, Maryland. Also, you have Illinois here, California, Oregon, Washington, Hawaii,
Eh,
Colorado,
Colorado.
and that looks like it's probably it for right now. And let's go here to Republican states, or
Let's
actually
go
New
to
York as well. New York
yeah,
didn't
yeah, yeah.
register,
All right,
but
let's
yeah,
go
if you
to
go
Republican.
here,
We got North
North
Dakota, South Dakota, Kansas, Oklahoma is going to be a big one. Idaho, obviously, Utah. Let's see here, Alaska, of course, Louisiana, Arkansas, Missouri, Iowa, Ohio. That could be contested. Kentucky, Indiana, and then we also look at Alabama.
Florida as well, South
And then
Carolina, and I think that we can say some likely ones too.
we,
I would
we
say
could say
North Carolina is going to be a tough race, but I think that I'd actually classify it more as a lean at this point. Georgia, I would say I'm not touching that. Um,
yeah,
and
that's a
we
lot to
look
talk about with
here,
Georgia.
yeah, you look at North Carolina. I think that Wisconsin, there's going to be a lot to talk about. Also, Nevada, Arizona. And then for leans or more likely, I would say New Hampshire is going to be a likely blue. But as you can see here, there's going to be 5 seats that are going to be um, really coming down to the wire. And I think that those 5 races are going to be states where we saw Biden have a lot of success in 2020. But again, that was 2 years ago. There has been a lot of change since then. And I do think that these states are going to be very close. Last year in the special election, Raphael Warnock defeated Kelly Loeffler with 51% of the vote. He carried it in mostly big counties with DeKalb County. He held in 84%. If you look down here at Chatham County, where Savannah is, he took in 59% of the vote. And also here in Muscogee County, where Columbus is, he took in 63% of the vote. And similar to Biden in 2020, the Democrats went big in the suburbs. They were able to get that white suburban woman vote, which has been crucial in a state like Georgia with how contentious that is. So if we look here again into 2022, these are current polls in Georgia, and we can see it, how things have played out in recent polls and recent headlines. There's been a lot of talks about the personal life of Herschel Walker, who was a former NFL player, which has impacted the polls, recent polls. But when Herschel Walker announced he was running back in March of 2021, he actually was leading by 2%. And since then, it seems like it's been going back between 2 to 3 percentage points. Looks like in early spring, late winter, early spring, Emerson, Blueprint, University of Georgia, and Quinnipiac all had Walker leading by 2 to 3 percentage points. But since then, since all the news has come out, it has looked like it's been between 4 to 8 percentage point lead for Warnock. And right now, it's at a 5 percentage point lead for Warnock. And this was the mean of these two polls back in June. So if we look ahead into the Georgia poll and the Georgia polls, and also this map, I think that there's going to be a lot of suggestions and questions to come. Specifically, what Herschel Walker should run on, also areas where they should campaign, and also, what strategies they should implement. So, Big Don, let's put you in the shoes of Herschel Walker's campaign manager here. We'll play a little bit of a game real quick. Just looking at this map here, do you think that it would be a fair suggestion to say that Herschel Walker should be campaigning in more suburban areas?
Well, that's not something where your ballot rounds are going to be. I think obviously Herschel, they got to find a way to sort of tone down the PR of what's going on with his family situation there, especially when it comes to Secret Sons there. Also, Christian Walker there. I don't know how I feel about him, but in, in terms of demographics here, I think I might have to lean a little bit more towards Warnock here. I think he's going to heavily campaign in those suburban areas, especially with abortion on the ballot now. I think how it's looking right now, Georgia has a 6-week ban, but that could obviously be very much contested as it did swing a little bit more Democrats in the 2020 election. I think right now, as we're seeing with Warnock having a 10-point lead over the polls, I'm not saying Herschel Walker doesn't have a chance here, but at the same time, he's got to do a lot of damage control there. So up until November, he's got some time to do it. But I think right now, I think Georgia is going to remain blue.
Okay. I think that's a bold prediction that you made. As of right now, I think Warnock, since he is the incumbent, I think that he does have a little bit more leverage over Walker. However, I think the main concern for Warnock is whether Walker can, test him with the Christian vote. He can maybe another suggestion would be whether he can get the Republicans out to vote again, and specifically Augusta, Georgia, which is in the south of Georgia. Um, yeah, actually the eastern part of Georgia in Richmond County, how that county has actually seen an uptick of registered Republicans, and this was from the article here. And I mean, if you look at Richmond County back in 2021, this was back in the special election in early January. Warnock had 69% of the vote compared to Loeffler's 30.4%. However, if you look at the numbers here, let's say that Walker can improve on Loeffler's numbers, and let's say he can gain 5% of the vote there. He can trim that down to, still losing that county, but making gains. And this is what we saw with President Biden. He was able to make some gains in the rural counties where, we're going to go Republican, but just by how much? That was the question. And if Herschel Walker can do the same in blue counties like Washington County, down here into Chatham County, also in DeKalb and Fulton, if he can maybe get 5 to 10% more than what Loeffler performed, I think that this he could flip. But I do see where there has been issues with Walker and also just some concerns for Republicans. But I would say right now, if we are going to put it on the map, and the two indicators of those two last polls that we just pulled up, I think that as of right now, it's looking that I'm going to put this in a lean blue. I'm going to classify Georgia as a lean blue. Pennsylvania is also a state where there has been a little bit of a change. The Harrisburg area in central Pennsylvania has seen a specific gain in Republican enrollment registration. But on this race, we're going to have John Fetterman, who's the current governor. Actually, he's the there's actually a specific term for him, but he is currently the governor of Pennsylvania. He's the Democrat, and Mehmet Oz, who, if you don't
Dr.
know,
Oz.
Dr. Oz, who's an entertainer. I just pulled up the 2020 election map really quick just to look at some of the counties that I think are going to be very crucial here. So let's first look at Allegheny County. This is where Pittsburgh was. Biden won this by about 20% in Allegheny County. And this is going to be one county that I think could determine this race. Also, if you look up here into Northampton County, this was very close with Biden winning by 0.8% in this, just over 1,500 votes there. And then if you look down here into Bucks County, this has also been a county that was very crucial. It's a suburban county of Philly. Biden won this by about 3.5% there. So those are some counties that I think we really need to keep in mind for this race. And now let's go to some of the polls from Pennsylvania. So again, this is a compilation of polls that have come out since the beginning of the year. And if you look at the average of these past three polls from June, um, it shows about a 7% favor for Fetterman. So I think that looking at these polls right here, I can make a couple assumptions as to what could play out. I think that Fetterman, honestly, with his attack ads, and also just with the way he's been polling, and also since he has been known to the Pennsylvania electorate for quite some time, he does have a big upper hand. Although Dr. Oz is well known across the country and also known by Republicans and also just voters in Pennsylvania, he does not have that connection that Fetterman has. And although he also has that Trump, he's also backed by Trump. I don't think that's going to be enough to defeat Fetterman's.
Well, if Oz really wanted to, I think his hands are sort of tied with Trump, but he can obviously. I think Pennsylvania is going to be one of those states that's going to be going back to abortion here, I think it's going to be up for debate in terms of what exactly those limits are. If Oz can run more moderate on it and sort of emphasize sort of like, hey, we need to get the economy back and going. We need to bring back jobs within the Pennsylvania area. We need to make sure gas prices are low for us. I think if you could run on that, I think Oz might gain some a little bit more percentage points there. But at the same time, I mean, I think Pennsylvania voters are going to be sticking to their roots here and go for the home court advantage here in terms of Fetterman. I think he's had experience there. He knows his delegates. He obviously knows sort of the geopolitics of Pennsylvania. I think Oz is approaching this as an outsider. I mean, he could put off upsets. I mean, we said a lot of this stuff about Trump, but at the same time, I don't think Oz has the sort of energy of Trump to get up and excite voters. He did win the Republican nomination in a pretty loaded Pennsylvania race, but I think overall it's a still uphill battle for him, similar to Walker here. I mean, both these guys are both very high-profile candidates. People know their names, but at the same time, it's just gonna be a matter of their sort of political experience, as both Walker and Oz don't really have that much experience in politics. They're more known as celebrities. And
Yes, I do agree, and it's also interesting that you just brought that up too, is that, Republicans are kind of this could also be like, maybe a I would say kinda like the Trump model in a way, that Trump was an entertainer and businessman before he was even a politician, and how that, Walker and Oz, both, people who were seen more as entertainers prior to their, now political, careers, how that could, you know, put in effect. Could they get the Trump, um, momentum that they need? I'm not too sure because they're not Trump. They can get the Trump endorsement, but how far will that actually lead them in these races? And I think looking at these polls, and although I do know that polls don't vote, people do. I think that just looking at how Fetterman has done, how well he did in the Democratic primaries, and now here with these polls, I think that he has the upper hand, and I think that it would be a fair statement to say that right now I would classify Pennsylvania as a lean. And also, it did go blue in 2020. It has been a blue state for quite a while. And I think that it's going to stay that way in 2022. So for this race, Wisconsin is going to be between incumbent Ron Johnson and Democratic Mandela Barnes. Currently, it does seem like it's a more of a lean for Republicans, but still easier said than done. So for Johnson, actually, there's nothing. So yeah, right now, this was from June 22nd. Johnson is leading by 3%. This is him versus last three. It looks like this is the Democratic one has not been complete yet from this map, but it does seem like Johnson does have the upper hand. Oh yeah, all others. See, so it's not said and done yet. In Wisconsin, it looks to me like that, but they think that Mandela Barnes will be the nominee. I think Wisconsin's an interesting one because Biden did win that state again. He did win that state, and it was also a state that Trump narrowly won in 2016. But it seems like Johnson has a little bit of an upper hand, but he's only leading by 3 percentage points, and against Barnes, he's actually trailing by 1 percentage point. This was again back on June 22nd. We can actually look up Johnson's approval rating here. And I'm assuming that it must be pretty low. Yes, right now, Johnson has a 35% favorability percentage of registered voters, and 44% of Wisconsin voters view him unfavorably. This was back earlier in the spring, and this was conducted by Marquette.
I think one thing to also look at here is while Johnson may have a low approval rating amongst his constituents in Wisconsin, say that as like he's a congressman, as Johnson may have like a low approval rating among his voters in Wisconsin, you also got to look at the fact that Biden won by a very, very slim margin in 2020. So,
Yep.
and with how things have gone, I mean, we can go back to the. I'm not sure what the exact approval rating of Biden is in Wisconsin, but you gotta assume it's gotta be fairly low. And right now, the Democrats don't even know who they're gonna nominate.
That
So
is
I
true.
mean, it's gonna be. I mean, it's gonna be. It's very hard to project, but it seems to me like it's gonna be very close. But I think since Johnson's kind of the incumbent, I think I would give him a very, very slight edge in Wisconsin. I think what he needs to heavily run on is since there's probably gonna be a lot of fed up Biden voters there, you're gonna easily run on the economy there. It's a blue collar state. I think with the way it's looking in terms of the uncertainty here, I think the safe bets would probably go with Johnson, but I would not be surprised if this flipped whatsoever.
Yep, and I'm just looking at the this took a little bit of time, but this is the 2020 results of the election. And in the state of Wisconsin, Biden won that state by zero point 0.6 percentage points. So really not by much, 0.6% there. And I think that some of the counties that Johnson's going to have to look at, look at South County. This was decided between less than 2 percentage points or 2%. And then you look down here at Racine County, where Kenosha is. That was only between 3%, 3%. And you look up here into Brown County, where Green Bay is. I mean, that again is only about 6%. So, with how narrow those counties are, Johnson is going to really have to focus on those counties and how he can garner more votes compared to whoever he's going to face. And I'll put a lean right now for Republicans in Wisconsin. Okay.
Yep. What I'll say about Arizona. Arizona is in a pretty similar situation with as a Wisconsin as the incumbent is opposite of Wisconsin, and it's Mark Kelly, a Democrat. And right now with the Republican primary, it's a bit of a mess right now in terms of who's going to get the nomination. Right now, it's looking like it's going to be Blake Masters, who is a Trump's back candidate, and he's been invested by Peter Thiel in terms of campaign funds. So that's also a likely one. But I think that's obviously going to hold an advantage to Mark Kelly here. But I think a lot of the focus is going to be on I think Arizona is going to be a huge sort of battleground state for the GOP in terms of where campaign funds are going. Because we go back to 2020, that was probably one of the biggest contested states.
Yep.
During that whole entire election. So
exactly, and I'm looking at the 2020 race when Kelly actually flipped the seat. And this was very close. This was between, 2.7, 2.8% here. And I mean, you look at all the counties. I mean, they talk about Maricopa County, how important that is. And I know that back in 2017, Maricopa County actually, I believe, enrolled 1 million Democrats, registered 1 million Democrats within the first year of Trump's presidency. So they knew that a quote unquote blue wave was coming. And it was just a matter of who was going to show up on election day and also the weeks prior. And I mean, you saw McSally, she definitely didn't come in close. But I mean, with Kelly, what he was able to do in the state where he was able to mobilize and the areas that he focused on and the demographics he focused on, this was very huge for him. And I think that one of the issues that Republicans, whomever the nominee is going to be in Arizona, they can really focus on gas because of how high the prices of gas are on the West Coast compared to the East Coast.
Yep.
Due to how you have to ship it out there. And I believe that gas is a lot more expensive in Arizona and California than it is in a state like Georgia or South Carolina. And that could be something that they really discuss. Also, immigration is usually a hot topic issue there due to their border with Mexico. So that could also be something that a lot of, pro border pro border security Republican voters can really discuss. And, maybe they can also discuss other issues too. Maybe I'd say maybe foreign policy, maybe also just the economy in general and the voting records of Kelly as a senator so far. So those are some areas that they're really going to have to focus on. But in terms of counties that I'm really focusing on for this coming midterm, I would say Maricopa is one area that you're really going to have to campaign a lot of time in, and also here in Pima County too, because Pima County, it's a border county, um, and you might actually find a lot of Trump votes. I mean, you saw here in Pima County back in 2020, McSally had 40% of the vote. Even if you gain a couple more percentage points there, that could be what the Republican candidate would need in order to get over the top. But yeah, Maricopa County, I believe, will be the battle. And also, if Republicans can improve in Yuma County too, which is in the southwest of the state, if they can get more votes there as well, I think that they could do it. But as of right now, I think that if we look at some of the polls here, we may have a better idea as to how things could turn out in Arizona. These are some of the candidates that are projected. So right now, the Republicans, there's Brnovich, Lamone, Masters, and McGuire. And they do all favor Kelly. Now, again, we don't know who's going to be the nominee, but I think what Kelly would prefer probably is a candidate like Brnovich. I mean, you look at the most recent poll. I mean, this was back in this. The other issue with this is that all these polls are kind of outdated now. They're about a month and a half outdated. So a lot of developments could have happened within the past month that we're not really aware of. But I mean, looking at this past poll here, Kelly's around 50% in almost all polls, except for McGuire, who, for some odd reason, Kelly's only at 44% there. But if you look at all these different polls, Kelly's leading by, close to 18 to 20% in most of these polls. So that could show you that this could go blue. Again, there's a lot to take in. It really depends on who's going to be the nominee. Are they going to be endorsed by any big Republican names? Could that play a big? Could that really impact this race? And also, how will the new Republican registered voters come out too? So those are going to be all key issues. Again, Arizona has been a state that has been turning purple over the past couple election periods, and I think that with this cycle coming up, we're going to get a clear view as to what 2024 will look like. But from these polls, I do think that Kelly has the upper hand, especially since he is an incumbent. So I think that it could be fair to say that Arizona could lean blue.
Yeah, let's go back to our big board here, and then we're going. We shall give Arizona to the Democrats. So
that
right now,
that puts 50 to 49, which it'll come down to Nevada. If we look here in Nevada, I believe the incumbent is a Democrat here in Nevada.
Yep.
Yeah, Catherine Cortez Masto. And right now, 538 projects this is going to be a big toss up. Although I don't think that it's complete as to who is going to be the nominee for the Republicans. It says Adam Paul Laxalt, but I believe there are others as well on the ballot.
Yep.
Well,
One thing to consider with Nevada here is Nevada, since it's pretty close in proximity to California, it has some of the highest gas prices in the nation. So, and if we look at the polls here in terms of, yeah, as you can see here, there's only one nomination here for the Republican side.
Laxalt,
this is pretty split. I mean, we're talking about pretty narrow margins here.
Yeah, and what's weird with Nevada too is that it has been, I think it has been Republican in the past, but in recent elections, I know Clinton carried it in 2016 and Biden won it again in 2020, but it has been getting a lot more narrower as time has gone on. Let's look at actually how it played out in 2020 to get maybe a little bit of a better understanding. So as you can see in 2020, Biden carried the state of Nevada, and he won that state by roughly 2% points there. Some of the key areas, though, to look at: Clark County, which was carried by Biden. Biden won that by about 9%, and also up north as well in Washoe County, where Biden won by roughly 3% points. But in and around the more rural counties, Trump was able to carry those counties by roughly 40 to 50%. And I think that Lexalt, if he is going to be victorious in this race, um, Carson City County, counties that border California that are more rural are going to be counties that he's going to have to win by large margins. Clark County, also a county that seems like Las Vegas and just the urban area within Las Vegas. Um, that is going to be somewhere where Masto is going to have to look at and try to expand on what Biden was able to do, but Lexalt is going to have to look at the Trump blueprint and try to come up with a way that um, improves. And I think that one area that Lexalt can discuss is the economy. I think that this will be a topic that a lot of Republicans are going to touch on. Also, the price and inflation is going to be key as well. Just like Arizona, gas prices in Nevada are also relatively high compared to the rest of the country. So that is going to be an area and a talking point that I think that Luxalt needs to discuss.
I think as Biden had a 2% lead, almost a 3% lead, 2.5,
2.5, yep.
2.5. I'm gonna say that's gonna be falling a bit lower, and I think with how narrow it is, this is probably the most narrow race out of all the ones that we sort of analyzed here.
Yep.
I think with sort of the need of the economy being probably like the biggest out of voters, because I think voters are gonna be obviously there's gonna be a lot of single issue voters. They're gonna go to the poll based on guns, gun regulations, and abortion access. But at the same time, there's the broader issue of people trying to make do, pay the bills, make sure they're not spending too much on gas. I think that's going to be a huge talking point for the Republicans here, and I think Nevada is obviously going to be. I think if they could swing that a little bit home, depending on what's going to happen with the coming months, I don't think it's going to be unless this federal gas tax is implemented, which right now states are actually implementing taxes of their own. I think right now, I think you might see. I think that's going to be what not Democrats, Republicans are going to be running on. I think that might give a slight edge to the Republicans here.
I do agree as well. I think that there have been these polls, although they're a little bit outdated from the spring, they do show that it's looking like it's either going to go one way or the other. It also shows you that, with some polls being 4 to 7% in favor of Lexalt and about 12% to 9 to 12% in favor of Cortez Masto. I think that it really is going to come down to who's going to have more momentum at the end. And looking at all these issues and also how close Nevada was in 2020, I think that it's looking like it's favoring Lexalt here. Even though Cortez Masto is the incumbent, that does look like Lexalt does have a little bit of a lean. So I think we're going to go lean here with Nevada as well. But again, we're in a dead tie, dead heat. So
we're in the gridlock.
This is going to be another gridlock. It looks like it could be. Now, again, we don't know how these 5 races are going to turn out. Even North Carolina, too. North Carolina could be a race that could be even closer than what we're imagining right now. But, looking at these 5 states, these 5 areas that were contentious in 2020 and 2016 as well in both presidential elections, we're going to be seeing something similar, I think, at 2022. And with these issues right here that we highlighted at the beginning of the video, some of these issues are going to be on voters' minds, and also new ones too, like the Supreme Court as an institution, abortion, gun control, economy, inflation, foreign policy. Those are all going to be issues that are going to be on voters' minds. And I think that whoever can, find their target voters and can also, hit home a new message will come out on top. I know it does sound general, but at the same time, these are the issues that matter the most. And sometimes the candidate that has the best policies and can find that target voter population will come out on top. So again, These are going to be the states that will really determine it. We don't know whether or not Republicans or Democrats are going to be in the majority or we're going to be back in a dead tie, but we'll just have to wait and see. So those are my final takes. Any big final takes, Big Don?
Oh, geez. I think with the gridlock here, once again, I think it's going to be. I think it's going to be another interesting 2 years before we do this all over again, in terms of what gets passed and what gets not passed in Washington. But in terms of this scenario, this is what we think is going to happen, and we'll see what plays out within the next coming months.
Well, that looks like it's going to do it for today's video. Thank you all again for tuning in. Hit that like button, subscribe, and also hit that bell so you never miss a beat. This is the Peace and Chaos program. See you later.
Peace.